joining me now is Amy Pendergrass from WorkChum. Amy, how are you doing?
Hello. Hi, Simon. Hi, NNBN world. How's everyone today? Happy Jubilee.
Yeah, great celebrations we saw with Her Majesty's 70th Platinum Jubilee. And I've got to ask, because you haven't got a Northamptonshire accent there, have you? So where is
Uh,
it you
you
come
know,
from?
interestingly, I don't. No, I do not. And so I am American by nationality, even though I've been in the UK now since 2015. And it's my first big Queen celebration. And I know it's a big one because this is the longest anyone has served on the throne in the UK, which is kind of amazing to be here to witness all of that as in my adopted country. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the celebrations were fantastic, and great to see everyone coming together for the celebrations and everything. But we're not here to talk about the Queen's Jubilee, really, are we? Here to
We're
talk
not.
about you, your
We're not.
business, and
We're
starting
talking
a
about the
business,
Jubilee of
Amy.
startups. So there we go.
So yeah, starting a business. I mean, how long have you guys been going?
Oh my God. Well, from concept to now, it's been about 15 months. In regards to how long we've actually been, I would say officially trading, that's been going on since early this year. So we are still very, very new ourselves at WorkChum. But our journey, kind of like a lot of startups, started, a year ahead of time. Everything from that whole having to wind up the old life to trying to get your head around what it is you're trying to say and what you're trying to do, which never stops, by the way, for those folks who are in the process of starting up. I'm sure this is a familiar narrative. It doesn't stop. You're always learning and adjusting. And, when we're in a process of doing a little bit of that again at WorkChum, we're forever that student. We've been out for several months meeting clients, getting into rooms, talking to folks about what we do at WorkChum and realizing, okay, yeah, we know some things, but then there's things we know that we didn't know a couple months ago. And so we've got to incorporate that into our messaging and into our services. So yeah, it's a moving feast starting a business, isn't it?
It's absolutely, and I love the way you phrased it there. I mean, you're forever learning, and you're at this learning academy of business, which changes, constantly changes as well. And if you don't move with the times, you will get left behind, won't you?
You will get left behind, absolutely. And I don't want to bring up the big C word, the COVID word, but I mean, it's kind of changed everything. And I know that's a bit of I know that's kind of a wore out trope at the moment, but it really is true. I mean, we didn't technically start trading in the midst of COVID, but we definitely started building the business. Myself and Gemma did during COVID, and even through that process, like what was important or acceptable or what people wanted to do or how they wanted to interact with you as a consumer or as a business, that has changed. Oh, it feels like 55 times in the last 12 months. And of course, coming through now with the changes in cost of living and inflation increases. I mean, all of these things are things that's in everyone's mind, let's be honest. But I think as a new startup, especially when you're trying to do things like figure out how to price things, figuring out whether services are being offered at the right time at the right price. I mean, all these things are impacted by these things, and I have a newfound appreciation for the challenges that come with all of that because it is a challenge. It really is.
Yeah, it is. It is a challenge, but I think I think for me, I left employment in 2009. So I've started a
Yeah.
business, I've fallen over, I've hurt myself, I've cut my knee and grazed and gone crying to mum and dad. But then I've also learned that there's so much to learn, and I think it can be quite daunting sometimes, can't it? So what was it like when you first took that first step, your first day in business? How would you describe the feeling that day?
Well, it's it's a bit like being on a roller coaster. It's exhilarating. You do feel a little like you're going to puke. I mean, it's like this is great, except I don't know. So it is interesting. I think most of the time, I've been really excited because it's something I've wanted to do all my life. It's just taken me a long time to figure out what that idea was, right? And so there's part of that being, pretty proud of the fact that, like, wow, I've done it. I'm opened the door. But there is a lot of that what's next that comes. And I think that's the part that I'm still trying to figure out, is like, what does this mean, and what are these timelines, and how does this develop? So yeah, it is a bit like, I always describe running a business like drinking out of a fire hose to people. It's one of these things where it's like, it's like, wow, I've got all this stuff coming at my head all at once, but I would say, on the flip side, on the positive side of it, I don't think I'd want to be anywhere else, actually, because there is that creative control that you rarely get inside somebody else's organizations, because it's somebody else's idea. That's what brings us to this place ultimately.
Yeah. And what were you doing before you came into the business? Well, what was it you actually did as a career, or as a job, before you took the step into self-employment?
Yeah, well, the WorkChum is career number 3, as we do in this modern world. The days of working at the same company for 50 years, I think, have come to a close. I started out my career actually as a solicitor. So an attorney, as we say in the United States. And I used to represent employees and trade unions in the United States. And I did that for almost 10 years. And then came to Europe, actually, because I lived in the Netherlands before I came back to the UK. So this is country number 3, career number 3. And I was working as a HR business lead across Europe and the UK. And so at one point was working for Belkin, the consumer electronics firm, which some of your listeners may know, because obviously their UK logistics headquarters was right over next to Rushden Lakes. So, which is why I'm in this area, actually. And there I was working across the Middle East and Africa and Europe, and then left there when there was a big acquisition, and moved to Shakespeare Martineau. So kind of went full circle back into professional services where I started, but from that standpoint, in an operational standpoint. But I think it was going into Shakespeare Martineau that I realized, if I'm going to get on with this, starting a business, I need to get on with it. It's time. Because there was always that bit of, and this is what I've heard from a lot of entrepreneurs, there's always that naggy thing in the background going like, this isn't right, there's something not right. What do I need to be doing? And that's what started this whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you've got it in you and you really want to give it a go, then I think the best words of advice I can offer is just go with it and see how you fly. Unless you take that plunge out the nest, you're never going to know, are you? And I think there's so many people that I've met over the years, amazing stories, amazing people. They're entrepreneurial, their flair, their vision, their drive, their energy is incredible. And you know what? I absolutely love it. I love hearing their stories. I love hearing how they've got around situations, or they found a challenge and they've got over that problem. And I think that's where we all learn as we go forward, because it is such an incredible place to be, isn't it?
It is. And, I think first off, it kind of puts you into a club almost, because it's funny when you meet other entrepreneurs now. It's like there's that element, people understand what you're going through, but then there's those people who've done it and they really understand what you're going through. And there are sometimes when I reach out to some of my fellow friends who are kind of in the same journey I am, to say, oh, I don't know, I'm having one of those days or whatever, and it hits different with them, because, there's that understanding of like, yeah, it's a lot. It is that drinking out of the fire hose feeling. It's a lot. But the other thing too is, I think it's reminding ourselves that, even if you opened the doors and it didn't work, I mean, you're still a success, because to even do this is a lot, and it's a big deal, and it's giving yourself that space. I know. And that sometimes is even hard to do, especially when things are tough, like they are for a lot of people right now, especially for some of our customers. Things are tough right now. But reminding them that you did this,
Yeah, absolutely.
you are a success. Well
Absolutely.
done.
And I look at it, success. I mean, to me, if you start breaking it down, you've got the S, which is something, U is the letter U, and then the double C can celebrate every single second. And I
Oh,
say
I
it all the
love
time.
this.
It's what I look at. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. It can be something really small. At the end of the day, if you've achieved it, go and celebrate it, because it's the motivation that drives us, isn't it? Because it can get lonely, it can get challenging, it can get
Yeah.
frustrating. I'm sure I had more hair and I wasn't grey when I first started out, but it's kind
Oh,
of
you
crept
look
in over
great.
the
Come on, man.
years. But wow, what a journey! It's been fantastic. It really has.
No, it's true. And I love that breakdown of the word success. I think it's also, and this is a thing I think I've really become to appreciate. I knew this, but I really knew it as I've went through this journey, Simon. And it's about understanding what your success looks like. There's so much noise out there. There's so many people telling you, well, you should be this, or you should be doing this, or if you had done this, this would be bigger or better or whatnot. And I think you kind of, yes, you should listen and take on what's important, but it's a lot of static. And it's about saying to people, what is your success? How do you define that? And look, if that is you just being a one lady or one man band, getting enough work, having your Fridays off, doing whatever, if that's your success, that's your success. And to me, that is just as valid as turning over 10.5 million pounds a month.
Yeah,
Okay. You're
absolutely.
both doing the same thing. You're both doing the same thing, guys. And I think, especially in this day and age, and you probably of yourself, Simon, have been in these conversations, especially around things with social media and everything else. We talk about constantly being bombarded with this, like, oh, I need to be this, or I need to be doing this, or I'm not legitimate, or whatnot. And I don't think that's true. I think if you set yourself out and you've reached what you believe is that comfort point where you believe that's successful, then you are successful, and you don't need to apologize for that. You are there. And I think it's always hard because there is such a massive element of the unknown when you start up something. It's like birthing something. It's like having children. Like, they're here, but you don't know how they're going to turn out. They could be amazing, they could be terrible. You don't know these things, right? You just got to keep at it.
Yeah,
and and
absolutely.
and and that's it is perseverance. I think more than anything is probably that the most important thing as a startup,
Yeah,
a founder.
absolutely. I,
Perseverance.
I met a guy a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, and I think at the time my business was turning over about 110,000, and which was quite a nice healthy
Yeah,
turnover.
that's a healthy turnover. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And I got chatting to him, and I said, "What's your turnover?" And he said, "Look, it's 1.1 million." And I went, "Wow." And I just went, "I'd love to be you." And he went, "All right, I've got 10 times the amount of turnover, but I've also got 10 times the amount of headaches." And do you know what? I looked at it and thought, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing?" Right. Do not grow to that size. Seriously, do not go to that size, because the headaches that must come with. Wow. But what a fantastic guy. And I tell you, it was the same guy that actually said to me, I lost a third of my turnover overnight once. And I was really down in the dumps about it, big
Sure.
change. And of course, it hit me. And he said to me, "What was your first month's sales?" I went, £356.81. He went, "In your first month?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "What made you get out of bed for £356?" And I went, "Yeah, what did get me out of bed?" And do you know what? Those few words gave me that right,
Ah.
come on, let's get up and go. I remembered my first ever month in business in June 2009. And just those small words of what made you get out of bed for £356 a turnover, not even in profit. It was incredible. But it was, oh wow, it's such a journey, and such a I just love the people involved. I really do, because I think you're forever looking out for each other, or you're forever trying to help move people forward or learn something. And I think that's the biggest thing I think I enjoy about it all, and what goes on. And but yeah, it's a great journey to be on, I think, but a little frustrating, and we've all had those head banging moments, haven't we? So
Well,
tell
you
me,
bring up
Amy.
a
Oh, sorry,
oh,
go
sorry,
on.
Simon.
No, you
I
go
was just
first.
going to say, you bring up a really interesting point, though, about what makes you get up out of bed. And I think that's another thing that, I've really grown to appreciate as a founder, but also, as part of WorkChum's services. We've sat down and helped people find that kind of their own personal, almost mission and strategy. It goes back to that whole Simon Sinek piece of finding the why, right? And while that could be a clever marketing toy, it's actually very true, because I think it's in those moments of yeah, I'm only going to make 500 pounds this month, that you've got to have something else really driving you. Like, what are you trying to accomplish with that organization? And frankly, that's true with your career as well. Because, we all go through cycles of ups and downs, whether you're working for somebody else or you're working for yourself. And that is such a powerful message. And it's funny that, you had just as much motivation as he has. Of course, you have less problems because you have less turnover, but he reaches, it came to a very important point. It's like, again, this is why, if you understand your why and you know how to deliver that, that's going to get you through that 500-pound month. It's going to get you through that 10,000-pound month, because they're going to have problems wherever you're at. You're never going problem free. So it's a really interesting thing to think about. Sometimes when you're in those early days, you're probably more connected to why you're doing something, because you're not distracted.
Yeah, absolutely. And you raise a very a really interesting point about the why. A lot of people don't discover their why till later on, do they? But that's what you're actually
Yeah.
helping businesses to actually understand why they're doing what they're doing and why they're getting out of bed every morning.
Why they're getting out of bed anymore, and why their teams are there, and why their people are there, actually. And that may sound esoteric to people, but let's be honest, that's the fundamental foundation of any relationship. Like, why are you here in this relationship? What are we trying to accomplish with this organization? It doesn't matter what ultimately has to get fixed within a team or within a company. It all comes down to, we have to get back to fundamentally what we're trying to accomplish, and
Yeah,
why these
brilliant.
people and processes tie back into it. I think as founders, we know that even more than anything, because this business is an extension of us as a person. It's literally our why.
Yeah, brilliant. And talking about your why and your journey, I mean, obviously you've grown as a person since you come into the self-employment world, have you?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, myself and Jim at Dipple, I mean, we come with, 30 years of combined operations and HR and legal experience. Okay. So we've seen it all. We've been around it all. We were in that unique position of sitting in that epicenter of a lot of organizations. But when you come out of that to run your own, you get a different perspective on what goes on behind even some of those decisions, and why people act the way they do, and why they think the way they do. I mean, we had some understanding of that because, of course, we were in those problem solving and those spaces in which we needed to bring all these peoples and processes and solve all these problems and unmask all these challenges. But when you yourself are sitting in that space, that gives you a perspective that you just don't get until you've done it. Because I can sit down with another founder now, or even another manager, and be like, look, I mean, I don't just theoretically get what you're going through. I get what you're going through, because like I've went through it now. But
Yeah.
that's been one of our biggest things as we've went through and grown our own design and development of WorkChum, Simon. It's about making sure that the things that we learn along the way, that those get cycled back in, so that we can help people get to those places bit quicker,
And
because
I
we've
think
been
that
through it.
that service that you're offering is pretty key for businesses as well, because obviously we can all get quite close to what we do. We're in the thick of the action, but who's actually working with business owners to actually direct them or point out various things that you may see as an external party to what they just don't see because they are that close to it. So I think you're adding tremendous strength to businesses in what you're offering with WorkChum. And I suppose a question for you is how have you found working with some of the different clients that you've worked with so far since being in business? Have you found it really exciting, or has it been educational, or what's been the highlight for you?
It's actually been both. And not that as a cop out of an answer, but it's really true, because every person that we work with, we learn something. And that's the element of working with actually people and helping them take apart what's ultimately keeping them stuck, or what's blocking them from managing a change. Because there's no situation that's the same. Yeah, of course. Sure. I've helped people build teams. Sure. I've helped them, unblock a major breakdown in a workplace relationship. Sure. I've helped them look across processes, but all the time, it is every situation is ultimately unique. So in a way, we learn something new every time we go out and work with a client. And because we're in that startup growing phase, we're being hyper vigilant about, okay, well, is the work support program we're offering, is that robust enough? Are there things that we, because we had this situation, do we need to make sure that we make this slight tweak or this slight change? So we're always tinkering in our own laboratory every time we get excited. Oh my God, yes, because as anybody, and I know you'll know this better than anybody, Simon, you spend 95% of the time doing all the operational crap in the background, 5% of the time actually delivering. You're like, oh, hey, this was the reason I started the business. Interestingly, it was not to be a social media person. It was actually to help people solve workplace problems. So I get very excited when I get to go out and deliver, because it gets me right back to oh yeah, this is why I'm laboring over a cash flow sheet every Friday morning. You know what I mean? It's like and again, this goes back to that why. It's another touch point to be like, yeah, this does make it worth it. Like this is important. It's just a matter of volume and a matter of scale at this point. The more people we can say, look, yeah, as a founder, for instance, you don't need to go it alone. Maybe you are sitting here and going like, am I even doing the right thing right now? How do I manage absenteeism with a group of people? I don't know if I need help. Like, can somebody help me? You don't have to do this by yourself, actually.
Yeah, and I think that's
Yeah.
one thing that people are quite. When you set up a business, you need to find people you can trust, that you can work with around you, don't you? Rather than trying to take on everything, and focus on the bit that you can manage, rather than trying to take on everything. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I learned, was not trying to do everything, because when you start a business, you literally you're having to learn to sell it, to market it, to grow it, to develop it, to listen to the bank, to work out how much money you've got, let alone post on your 5 social media channels a day or whatever you got. So to work with someone, a companion, or someone that's close to you, I think it's critical these days, isn't it?
No, it really is. And I think, prime example, we've brought in Donna Callender at Know Your Niche to come and help us, for instance, with that marketing and PR piece, because WorkChum ultimately, kind of works on both sides of a very common problem, which is, how do we get people and relationships in workplaces to not be broken? How do we help people take, productive assessments of what they need to do, the challenges they need to tackle, and how do we give them the tools to do that? And because we're working with what we call consumers, or individuals, employees, and also businesses, and helping them design those kind of work environments to thrive, well, how you reach those two groups of people is fundamentally different. And for a small business like myself and Gemma, talk about like being at the depths of the ocean. We can't, we don't come from a marketing background. We know what's supposed to happen, but we need people to help us. And so we have had to make those decisions over time to say, okay, if we really want to develop, say, that business to consumer side to get to individuals, some of that can be done through networking, but a lot of it's going to have to be done through actual old school marketing. Yep. Whereas if I'm going to come in and talk to you as a business owner and say, you want to get the maximum profitability out of your employees, you want to create good working environments, you want them to be able to really not only be able to be happy and productive, but also to be creative and to unlock growth that you haven't even thought about. Well, we're going to have to do that through networking, and we're going to have to do that through talking to folks within our NNBN network and say, are you hitting it with your people today? Like, what do you need to get done? What is that problem that's keeping you locked? And so we've had to make that assessment too about, where are those touch points? Where are those tools that we need to bring in? And we understand that, look, as founders, and, and I know we're talking kind of specifically about startups, that's one of the hardest decisions to make, because you're freaked out about money. You're in that hyper control space where you feel like I got to have my hand in everything. And it's about getting people to be able to, to step out for a few minutes and go, okay, maybe I don't need to do all these things. In fact, I'm losing money because I'm doing all these things. Actually, we had a client very recently that we had to do that exact situation with. He runs this pretty successful audiovisual business. He's at a point where he does need to start to scale, but he had never sat down and actually done an inventory of his own time. He had not thought about the fact that actually me sitting around putting elaborate quotes together and drowning in my bookkeeping was actually keeping me from actually doing proper business development and delivery. So we're helping him get hooked up with the VA right now, but we helped him make that decision. We were able to help him give them the space and the tools so that he could actually assess his own situation and make him understand that there's commercial gain by sometimes giving some of that control up, actually, because it's hard to believe that when you have limited resources. I know.
Yeah, we've been there. I know exactly what he means and why he was probably a little bit nervous of doing that. And why do you think people are nervous of it? Do you think it is literally the control factor, or it's the, I haven't got the money, or I don't want to worry about paying somebody extra or something for it, or it's too much hassle to delegate out is the one I hear quite often. I'd much rather do it myself. What's your sort of thoughts on it?
I think from what I have seen, both from my years of working with folks, but also especially now as I'm coming in at a different space with clients, Simon, I think what I see is a combination of sometimes just not having the confidence and courage and the right information to understand what it takes to manage and make these decisions. It's partly why, as part of WorkChum's remit, we spend time helping to educate people so that they understand what it means to hire somebody. They understand that, they can do things in multiple ways, and they understand, they have the language so that they can speak intelligently about it. I think one of the first things that scares us is we're like, oh my gosh, I have this thing I have to manage, head in sand. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it later. I'll get away from it. So some of it is, even when they desperately know they need the help, they're just pushing it away because it's overwhelming to think like, I've got to first off understand what it means to hire somebody. Do I bring a contractor in? Do I bring an employee in? Do I just upskill? Do I want to keep the control, or do I want to give the control away? These are important questions that, they're, in the course of running their, consultancy firm or their engineering firm, they're not thinking about these things. So these things get really scary. I think there's also an element of, people coming, especially if they've come out of corporate spaces, they're not like me and Gemma, who's always running around understanding that, people is an enormous investment in organizations. And without getting them functioning right, you are torpedoing your profitability. But when you're a smaller company, and especially if you've come away from a specialist space, you may not understand that. You may think, oh, well, I just, I don't need to understand that. That's that, a lot of times, especially when it comes to anything that's even smacks of like HR, it's like, oh, that's some thing somebody does in the corner. It has nothing to do with my operations and my commercial viability, when in fact it has almost everything to do with it, actually, especially if you're trying to operate smaller teams. I mean, look, money's always a factor, of course, but I think if you have control and you understand what you're doing, that makes that investment easier, because then you can look at your seed money, you can look at your operation cost and go, well, actually, no, it is important for me to get my head around this, and maybe that's a bit more important than whatever I'm doing over here with this investment. We're all chopping and changing cash when we're in a startup. We all have to make these decisions, and I think the more education you get, that gives you that confidence and control. And that's a big thing for WorkChum, by the way. We really do believe in that education piece. Whether you're an individual, whether you're a company, we think that access to information becomes viable and just is so important, because how do you make choices for yourself if you don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about of WorkChum can actually help a lot of startup companies that are looking to grow and put those foundations in place early on.
Absolutely. And I think so. We've got a couple different ways that we help folks. I mean, first off, in regards to founders themselves, because again, the founder is such a key. We provide what we provide kind of two simple lines of products, but it allows us to help people manage two very different things. We provide what we call a work support program at WorkChum. And what that is for any individual who needs someone to sit down and needs the expertise and the coaching and the mentoring and the substantive knowledge to tackle a problem they've got in front of them. So if the founder, for instance, maybe they've got an assistant that they've hired and they've stressed out and they've got this person hired and they're not doing their job. And they don't even know where to start with that conversation. And so what we can do within our support program is help them unpick what's going on, help them take a look at what's going on in their organization, help them get the tools and a plan they need so they can go back and manage that. Especially with small businesses and micro businesses, sometimes they're having those conversations with clients and they need to sit down and go like, I have this difficult client that's asking me to do things, who's treating me like an employee of theirs when in fact I'm not their employee. Can somebody help me sort that out? And that's what our work support program is about. We also offer what we call a change support program. And that's where, for instance, maybe as I was saying to you with the gentleman who's got the audiovisual business, he's a one-man band and he now needs to make decisions. He's got a micro change in front of him. He needs somebody to help him figure out how to think about that, how to make the right decisions, how to put a plan in place. It's about taking these big tools and making them attainable to people. I mean, most startups, of course, don't typically come in with tons of cash to be, worrying about teams and stuff by that point. And obviously we work with teams and we work to help set work environments as well on our business side of the house. But I think for startups, a lot of times where we've seen the most help asked for is in that founder themselves. It's in the individuals actually, because if the founder's not clued in and if they don't know what they're doing, then you can hardly expect anybody else to. I mean, they're pulling all the strings at the end of the day. So that's how our individual side of the WorkChum business works. And we don't come in as a coach, because what we've learned is work is messy and sometimes you need substantive information. So that's where our law backgrounds, our HR backgrounds, our operational backgrounds is useful, because we can have a very pragmatic conversation with you, but we also are coaches and mentors. So we can help you process it.
Yeah, fantastic. Amy, I'm talking about your website. I mean, how can people find out more about what you offer? Have you got your website details you can share with us?
Yeah, so our website is at workchum.co.uk. And you'll find on our website that we have got both our individual page and our business page. And so that gives people an idea of the different kinds of services, because again, especially with a startup, you are a business, but you have a lot of individual problems. And so because we offer support in both spaces, you don't have to feel like, I'm not big enough to be a business, so they can't help me. We have help on both ends of the spectrum. And we have a 30-minute exploratory call, which is free. And you can book that right on the website. It'll take you straight through to the system. You can get signed up and you can have that chat and you can figure out whether the support that we provide is right for you. And we have our set programs, but we also do a lot of bespoke building of programs, because again, as we were saying earlier, Simon, problems in the workplace are ultimately unique. And, our job is to come and help you figure out what you actually need. Because, if it was as easy as here's a box of stuff, get it done, we'd all done that already. But we know it doesn't work that way, actually.
No, not at all. If only it was that easy, eh?
Oh my God, we'd all be running major businesses at this point if it was that easy.
With 10 times the headaches, yeah, absolutely.
With 10 times the headache, but people are unpredictable and they're difficult sometimes, and it's okay.
And that's without things like the climate changing and everything else that's going on in the world. We've all got to face these problems as well. But Amy, it's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you. Thank you ever so much for joining us and talking to us all about what you get up to. And keep up the good work as well. Look forward to following your journey.
Absolutely. Thanks, Simon. And thank you for NNBN for supporting businesses like ours. I know you guys have got a startup program or a startup day coming along, which is great. And, thank you for providing this space for all of us because, we need to talk to people around us as we learn. And, community is it's such a great asset and a learning tool for all of us. So thank you for that.
No, absolutely no problem at all. And I think for us as well, we're keen to ensure that people do know that they can come and they can let the hair down as well as, the serious
Yeah.
side of business as well, because it's not all about literally, 9 to 5, as we know in any form of business. It is, sometimes 80, 100-hour week sometimes,
Yeah.
but we want people to let their hair down. We want people to enjoy it. Thank you for engaging with with the community that's being built, because it can be quite a lonely, challenging journey to
Yeah.
go on, and that's just after a couple of months of being in business. So we're here for that reason as well, supporting people where we can, and just driving things forward. So there we go.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Simon. And really glad to have been invited. I appreciate it.